Hey, welcome to 12 Tone. How do rappers use pitch? On the surface, it seems like kind of a silly question. I mean, they don't, right? That's the biggest difference between rapping and singing. But, well, that's not quite true. I mean, sure, rap may not always use precise intentional pitches, but any human vocalization is gonna have some fundamental frequency, and given how clever rappers can be with how they use their voice, it'd be more surprising if they didn't do at least something with their inflection. So, how does it work? This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. I should start by acknowledging that this is a pretty under-researched area. Hip-hop doesn't get anywhere near the respect it deserves from music academia, especially music theory. That's not to say this is a complete mystery. Actual rappers spend a lot of time thinking about these sorts of things, and I don't want to understate the value of practitioner expertise, but scholarly research serves a different purpose, and on that front, music theory is really dropping the ball. If you want to know why that is, you can watch my last video. But the upshot of all this is that most of the contents of this video are going to be based on a single chapter in the PhD thesis of Dr. Robert Komaniki submitted in 2019, with a few of my own observations thrown in for good measure. Hopefully Dr. Komaniki's work inspires more music theorists to seriously engage with hip-hop in the future, but for now I'm working with what I've got. First though, we've got to address the elephant in the room. Pitches in rap are often imprecise, but if we want to analyze them, we need some way to show what they're doing, so for this video I'm going to be adopting Dr. Komaniki's approach of using the lines of the staff to represent pitch zones instead of precise notes. I'll use the middle line to represent a rapper's normal register, and then if they go noticeably up or down, I'll move on to the other lines. So if I write this, that doesn't mean it's B and D or even that it's a minor third. It just means the second note is higher than the first. Got it? Great. In his thesis, Dr. Komaniki describes 5 main ways rappers manipulate the pitch of their voice for expressive effect, organized from most speech-like to most singing-like. In doing so, he cites a bunch of different artists, which is a bunch of different potential copyright claims for this video if I use his examples, so instead I decided to challenge myself to find all 5 techniques in Clipping Splendor and Misery, because it's an amazing album and I wanted an excuse to talk about it. Seriously, if you haven't heard it, I really recommend looking it up, after you finish watching this video, of course. The first technique, and perhaps the most obvious, is rhyme strengthening, where syllables that rhyme are placed in a different pitch zone from the rest of the line in order to draw attention to them, like in this clip from Air 'Em Out.
Rats decided it was time to hit the surface. Cats sleeping on it, write 'em off like cursive.
Where David Diggs highlights the rhyme between rats and cats by delivering them at a higher pitch. That's the obvious one anyway, but he also does a subtler thing at the end, doing the same little turnaround on surface and cursive to tie those together too. The line gives each rhyme its own melodic motif to help keep everything organized. This is especially useful because hip-hop often has much more complex rhyme schemes than other forms of pop music, full of internal rhymes, slant rhymes, and so on, so using pitch to emphasize rhymed syllables helps guide the listener through those structures. Like earlier in Air 'Em Out, we hear this.
Your war is like a board game, where it come from, I already bored, claiming your gang. Boom, go to gum.
And while a surface-level reading of the lyrics would easily identify the end rhyme between from and gun, Diggs' use of pitch reveals a secondary rhyme running through war, board, board, and your, spaced unevenly throughout the phrase, that wouldn't be immediately obvious otherwise. He's doing something extra clever, and the melodic contour helps make sure you notice. And I want to pull up one more example from Interlude 1. Again, we have a higher pitch to separate out all the syllables that rhyme with fun, but if you listen closely, you'll notice that bridge also appears in that same pitch zone. Why? Well, in his thesis, Dr. Komaniki briefly mentions that in this sort of analysis, we can sometimes think of rhyme non-literally. In this case, Diggs isn't highlighting words that sound the same, he's highlighting a clever bit of wordplay. He's talking about the bridge of a spaceship, which he then compares to the bridges of a famously crowded highway like Route 101 in Los Angeles. Moving it into the rhyming pitch zone tells you it's connected, even if it's not actually a rhyme. I should note though that for many rappers, this probably isn't a conscious decision. It's a natural part of human speech. We don't talk in monotone, and when we recite poetry, we tend to place rhymed syllables in the same pitch zone. If I say there are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold, you probably heard me going up on done and sun and down on gold to set up the end rhyme with the next line. Some rappers certainly use this actively, and I wouldn't be surprised if Diggs was one of them, but it's also worth keeping in mind that you don't need to be doing this intentionally in order for it to impact your listener. This brings us to the second technique, exaggerated declamation, where you take those natural fluctuations in speech and amplify them like in All Black.
The space stretches on and the pace that he's on matters not as he hurdles into the all black everything.
Here, the song uses that all black everything refrain as its primary structural component, referring to both the emptiness of space and the dehumanization of chattel slavery, and to make it clear how important it is, Diggs drops down to an unnatural monotone at a lower pitch level. If you were to just read these lines naturally, you'd probably go down a little bit on that part, but Diggs takes that tendency to the extreme, creating a musical motif out of exaggerated speech patterns. patterns. This can also happen gradually, like in Wake Up,
The chance that he ever reaches any place suitable to support life in his lifetime is pretty low.
where the entire line slowly descends, ending up what sounds to me like a perfect fourth below where he started, although again, the pitch is approximate, so don't quote me on that exact interval. This creates a dramatic, almost whimsical feel, bouncing back up at the start of each line in a deranged, playful sing-song pattern. Dr. Komaniki also mentions another common approach where the rapper keeps raising their pitch slightly over the course of a verse to build urgency. The best example I could find on Splendor and Misery is this bit from Air 'Em Out.
Who they want? Who they want? Game over. Game over. Old leech calling anyone who ain't sober.
But you see it a lot from rappers with more aggressive flows. For me though, one of the most interesting uses of exaggerated declamation comes from True Believer.
3 siblings happen to be gods, and they fight as siblings do.
Not a lot of pitch there, huh? No, instead Diggs adopts an almost perfect monotone, stripping the passage of the emotional context of speech. True Believer is a history, or perhaps more accurately a creation myth for the world of Splendor and Misery, and the choice to remove all his natural inflections creates a detached, distant feel and highlights that mythological framework. These are quite literally tales as old as time, and the exaggerated monotony drives that point home. The third technique is pitch-based rhythmic layers, and here Clipping hands us a perfect gift-wrapped example in the form of Baby Don't Sleep. The backing track for this song is mostly just white noise with no rhythmic information, but Diggs is able to create 4 rhythmically distinct sections just by manipulating the pitch of his voice. In the verse, he starts by emphasizing beats 1 and 3,
Cause your body is bone marrow and blood can never be trusted.
but that gets broken up by sections of double time.
Nothing is familiar, so the strange become the family.
In the chorus, he switches to a 6/8 feel and plays around with accent placement instead, first putting it on the 5th beat,
No home, you've been there, clearly all safety.
which is traditionally weak, making the rhythm feel unstable, before moving it back to the 4th beat where it feels like it belongs.
Baby, don't sleep. Baby, don't sleep too much.
And again, all of that is done with just the pitch of his voice. These pitch-based rhythmic layers show up in a couple other songs on the album as well, like A Better Place,
Inside the mind of a man is a massacre made up of many a miniature message. It misses the most of it.
where Diggs uses pitch to alternate between slower triplets and a faster galloping rhythm, but despite their prevalence here, Dr. Komaniki argues that this is the rarest of the 5 techniques, and I'm inclined to believe him. After all, just because Daveed Diggs likes to do it doesn't mean all rappers do, and Dr. Komaniki spent a lot more time studying this stuff than I have. But why is it rare? Well, the lack of scholarship on the topic makes it hard to say for sure, but Dr. Komaniki speculates that it may be related to the fact that on his spectrum of techniques, pitch-based rhythmic layers sit right in the middle, not particularly close to speech or to singing. This gives them an unnatural, uncanny quality that may make it feel less appealing and intuitive to most rappers. From here, we move on to the singing-like techniques, starting with the song interjection. This is pretty straightforward. We have a section of rap with a little bit of deliberately pitched vocalization thrown in for a treat, like in Wake Up.
So it's one shot in the arm, hazy in the head, hazy in the head.
Here I switched back to notating actual notes because Diggs is singing actual notes. These sorts of interjections help add more dimensions and complexity to a rap verse, showing off a different vocal texture to break up the potentially repetitive flow with something new, and while they've been happening for about as long as hip-hop's existed, they become more and more common in the last few decades, a trend Dr. Komaniki attributes in part to the increased popularity of the sung hook. In early hip-hop, the hook could take on lots of different forms, but over time artists mostly settled on featuring a singer, usually an R&B singer, to help round out the song. From there, you started to see artists sing their own hooks, like in Air 'Em Out.
Call the doctors and the nurses up. What you gonna do about it?
And once you have rappers singing on hooks, it's not a huge step for them to start singing in their verses too. The thing is though, many rappers are not what we might traditionally consider good singers. They have no training and their voices tend to sound rough around the edges, but that may actually be a good thing. Ja Rule, who helped popularize the trend in the early 2000s, argues, and I quote, "That's what made it popular, that they were able to sing along with it and they weren't intimidated by singing along to it because it was a guy that can't sing." It's kinda like folk music. The appeal isn't the virtuosity of the singing, it's the accessibility of it. It's a really cool dynamic, especially when you've got someone who is really technically skilled as a rapper. It helps to kinda humanize them. If the rapper is actually a good singer though, they may want to take this even further with a final technique, the sung verse, where, as the name implies, the entire verse is sung. I was worried I wouldn't find one of these, but fortunately for me, Diggs delivers on Break the Glass.
I'm so tired of being alone, I'm so tired of falling, won't you help me?
Generally, these sung verses have a relatively small range and stick to just a few notes, but they still contain precise, easily recognizable pitches, which raises an important question. Is this rapping at all? I mean, not having precise pitch is what sets rap apart from singing, so how is this not just singing? It's a fair question, and I think the best answer is... who cares? We often talk about rap and singing like they're completely different things, but they're not. They exist on a spectrum along with speech, chant, pattersong, Sprechstimme if you know what that is, and all the other ways humans can use their voice to express ideas, and the lines between those categories can get pretty blurry. These verses are sung, sure, but they also contain some characteristic behaviors of rap that you might not expect from, say, a more conventional pop singer. It's not uncommon to see relaxed intonation, speech-like melodies, characteristically hip-hop rhythms, and timbre more akin to chanting than traditional singing, and lots of artists like Nelly, Busy Bone, and Lizzo, to name a few, have built entire careers in this gray area. Refusing to count it as rap means losing those nuances and the insight they provide. Maybe it's not technically wrong, if that even means anything here, but it's definitely not useful or interesting. In the words of Dr. Komaniki, analysts should concern themselves with what's happening and resist the urge to nitpick over whether a rapper has misclassified themselves. So what's the conclusion here? How do rappers use pitch? Honestly, there's too many ways to count. As we saw, one rapper on one album managed to use it in so many different ways that I couldn't even fit them all in, and with countless artists and decades of development, no list could even begin to do them all justice. I mean, we didn't even touch on pitch shifting software like Auto-Tune, mainly because that's such a complex topic that it really deserves its own video. But thanks to Dr. Komaniki's work, we're starting to get a better picture of the general approaches, and I'm excited to see what he and other hip-hop theorists like him do next. On a completely unrelated note, my friend Alex has never heard of Rob Zombie. Trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. You see, Alex is a fellow YouTuber, and more importantly, he's 18 years old, and he started a new series called Alex Goes Bananas over on Nebula, where he learns about pop culture from the 90s like a historian. Patrick Willems made him listen to Limp Bizkit, Devin from Legal Eagle taught him about Gwen Stefani, and when my turn came around, I knew I had to show him one of the most important artists in my own musical journey, Rob Zombie. Oh, I should probably mention, Nebula is a streaming service made by some of YouTube's top educational creators like Adam Neely, Lindsay Ellis, Braincraft, and of course me at Alex. So if you want to know what late 90s industrial metal looks like through the eyes of today's youths, or if you also don't know who Rob Zombie is and you want Alex to explain it to you, we've worked out a deal where if you sign up for CuriosityStream with a link in the description, not only will you get a 26% discount on their annual plan, which gives you full access to their amazing library of documentaries, you'll also get a Nebula account free for as long as you remain a CuriosityStream member. That's 2 whole sites of great educational content for a whole year, starting under $15. And honestly, even if you never watch anything else, that's worth it just for Alex's show. It's really good. And hey, thanks for watching, thanks to our Patreon patrons for making these videos possible, and extra special thanks to this video's featured patrons, Duck and Howard Levine. If you want to help out and help us pick the next song we analyze too, there's a link to our Patreon on screen now. You can also join our mailing list to find out about new episodes, like, share, comment, subscribe, and above all, keep on rockin'.